That's right. Welcome in, welcome back, folks, to a What Should We Expect Next in Recruiting and When edition of the Always Irish Show. As always, you can find the program on YouTube. Do hit subscribe if you haven't yet. I'd appreciate it very much. Give the video a thumbs up if you approve of the content afterwards. I'd appreciate that as well. Twitter, search bar Always Irish or at Always Irish Inc. Emails, alwaysirishindy@gmail.com. Audio only. Anywhere you want me, you can get me. Call-in show 312-988-15. Have your voice heard and seen. Thank you to everybody you joined the other day. It was fun. So recruiting's the hot topic right now, and we're going to have an episode with our guest, Mason Plummer. We're adding him to the stream. Thank you for being here. You can find him on Twitter at Mason Plummer _ at the end. Do not forget the underscore. He is one of the Golden Homers. Check out the podcast wherever you like to get your audio content from. Welcome in, Mason. Thank you for being here. I know there's a White Sox game going on. We're both missing for this. So thank you for being here. Here's my angle. I know you're very much plugged into recruiting, and in many ways, we're in kind of unique recruiting territory for Notre Dame. I feel like we're starting to swim in the deep end of the talent pool, and in some ways that changes a lot of the ways we're used to Notre Dame recruiting going, and I feel like I personally sometimes am having trouble adjusting to some of these new realities. What do you feel about where we're at overall in this recruiting effort? Everybody thinks pretty good. You agree?
Yeah, it's a good thing, and I think you said it right in terms of big boy recruiting. It's intimidating when you have your number one guy in Keon Keeley, right? He's taking multiple visits to Alabama. He's taking a visit to Texas A&M, Florida, whatever. So he's taking these big-time visits that, of course, they're going to scare you, but that's what big boy recruiting is. If Notre Dame isn't in the race for Keon Keeley, he's going to all those places anyways. And you have to treat him a little bit differently, and I think that makes Notre Dame fans uncomfortable. They're not used to that, right? So where you have a guy that's committed, but really being committed at this point when National Signing Day is not till December, you're naming a leader. Nobody's committed. I mean, as much as you want to hear that, oh yeah, they're locked in. Are they though? Like anything can happen. So Keeley taking those visits, of course, it's going to make you scared. And a lot of guys are doing it too. But, Notre Dame's in a good position. Freeman has put himself at the helm of this recruiting effort. He's brought in guys that can recruit at a high level, and every single position coach is doing well. So, it's a good thing. This is what happens in big boy recruiting. If you want to go get the big targets, you have to fend off everybody else too. So, I really like where the program's at, especially in the recruiting aspect. And the 2023 cycle is really going to get kicking off here soon.
See, you nailed when I said things were changing in the way Notre Dame's approaching recruiting. You nailed on a topic a lot of people have brought up. A lot of Notre Dame people don't like that. When a guy commits verbally, but he's visiting other places, people don't like that. But what I said in my show is, I think this is how it goes when you're dealing with hat flippers. And you might have to deal with some of this. We're just not used to it. And it's progress though, but it's uncomfortable progress. And I admit it rubs you the wrong way, but that's how these guys get recruited. And if you just say, once you commit, you can't do that, guess what? Good luck with a bunch of high 3-star guys, and you're going to win your 9 games every year, whatever. So I think you hit on exactly one of those dynamics where we're just going to have to adapt. It's adapt or die. Things are changing so fast in college football. You got to keep up, get with the program, and live with it, or get left behind. So
you're absolutely right. And it's a new age of recruiting, and that you have to make these kids feel special. I know older fans, older people, they don't want to hear that. Notre Dame should be good enough itself. You're absolutely right. I'm totally with you. But you have to make them feel special, because that's what all these other programs are doing. You mentioned, I watched your show the other day about the Golden Throne. I mean, whatever. It made Dante Moore, loved it. Those are the most badass recruiting pictures I've ever seen. So if that's what it takes for him to like it, obviously the kids are taking well to it, then fine. Do you want better talent at Notre Dame or not? That's what it comes down to. That's what recruiting is right now.
Yep. And I get it. Oh, and you're exactly right, but we just have to adapt. You can't have it all. Where you want Notre Dame to win these championships, this isn't the 70s where you just roll into the Chicago Suburban Catholic League where I grew up, grab all the big tough linemen and go, you're coming to Notre Dame because you're in the Catholic League and it's over. It ain't how it is. So it's uncomfortable. And some of this is uncomfortable for me. And it's an adjustment, but we all need to understand this is literal progress.
Right.
Like this is a really, really great sign. So that being said, the biggest elephant in everybody's room is this quarterback situation. It just is. You can't talk about Notre Dame recruiting without that being the number one topic, and for understandable reasons, most important position in individual sports, and one that Notre Dame struggled at finding elite, consistent play recently. Vizina was largely recognized as, our second kind of option, second choice. He is now committed to Dabo and Clemson. Where do you think that places us in the more dynamic? Does it make you more nervous or feel more better that everybody knows what everybody else is angling here? Like Vizina knew he was the second guy and Moore was number one. Freeman knows, Moore knows that, and Vizina knows that. Vizina wanted to go here so he could be the guy. How do you see this? Because it could go a bunch of different ways. Where are you at with this entire dynamic that's making people nervous?
Well, you're right. I mean, it should be nerve-wracking, but that's the approach that you have when, I don't know exactly when it was, but it's probably going on 6 or 7 weeks ago, Notre Dame decided to put all of its eggs in the Dante Moore basket. So you either hit or you don't, and people don't like that because the last time it was notable that Notre Dame was going all in on a recruit was Will Shipley at running back, and things ended up being fine. You still ended up with Logan Diggs and Estime, but at the same time, they put all their eggs in the in the Shipley basket, and it didn't work out. And that was a heartbreaker for a lot of people because he's a stud talent, and it has to do with Clemson again. This is big boy recruiting, though, like we said, facing up, straight on head to head with Clemson. So, as it pertains to Dante Moore, you have to get him. It's as simple as that. So there was Jackson Arnold, who up and committed to Oklahoma, and he was a legit option. And then you have Vizina going to Clemson now. So Moore's been the number one option the entire time. That's Reese's guy. And Reese tends to get his guy. Last cycle, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Steve Angeli, but he was Reese's guy from the very beginning. So you have to applaud Reese for that. So if Reese can get his guy again, he's really proven his chops at getting his guy. Buckner was his guy. So Pine before that, now that I'm thinking about it. So you just have to get more, though, because the options after that are very slim. You're looking at an Avery Johnson, who is a lesser Tyler Buckner. He's very athletic, but he can't throw. So, I mean, you can always improve that. But if you don't
That's kind of a problem.
Right. If you don't get a Dante Moore in this class, you're absolutely banking on Buckner to be the guy for 2 or 3 years, and you're banking on Angeli to be something. Because if not, I mean, one of them is going to transfer out. Pine or Angeli aren't going to finish their career at Notre Dame. That's just the way it is. So you need to get more now. This is the time where you can really transcend the program, make a big mark, keep this positive momentum going. I mean, I feel good about it. I've been told anything to not feel great about the Dante Moore recruitment, but the longer it drags on, the more official visits he takes. It sounds like he wants to take them all. That's not ideal.
Like, where I get conflicted is, depending on who I talk to about this, I hear different things. And then you look at the Wild West online and you read totally opposite things. And you just don't know where the exact truth falls. The one pitfall I think Freeman needs to avoid year one running this all himself is ending up holding an empty bag at the end of this quarterback sweepstakes. And it isn't going to be because of lack of effort. We all know that. And we've seen that. It isn't going to be lack of communication and effort and all those type of things. It would be for other reasons. But I think that's the one nightmare he's got to do everything to avoid, is especially with the recruitment that's been made this public. I just think even though that 23 class is ranked number one right now, That's the one pitfall he can't have, is holding that empty bag. Vizina's off the board, so there goes people's kind of safety net that I think everybody was kind of leaning on. And you can't blame that guy for committing. If he wants to commit somewhere, he's not going to wait around forever to see what another guy's going to do, you know? So I totally get him doing that. I've heard different rumors about the time frame for Moore. Do we have any idea legitimately what that looks like? Because I've heard some wild rumors about it and about things happening soon. And then other people going, no, man, you better chill out because this is going to drag on and on and on. So I don't know where we fall.
I saw people, these aren't verified people by any means, but people that seem to think there was a chance that when he visited, he would pop, and he did not. And I never really thought that was a possibility, considering he was still talking about other programs, unless he just wanted to build smoke or whatever. Then it was talked about at the end of May, potentially the end of April. I think he's going to drag it out, but one thing he has stayed firm in is being done before his senior season, so he can focus on that. So if it plays out through the summer, whatever, but at the same time, I mean, I'd like to have everybody, including myself, a little sigh of relief. You got the guy at quarterback. Nothing's final until he signs. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes. I mean, like I said, you're just naming a leader. So you verbally commit to somewhere. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean what it used to anyways. So until he signs, all it takes is going on the Notes app. Hey, thanks, Notre Dame. I'm going to Alabama. That's all it takes. So, it's going to be nerve-wracking until whatever the signing day is, December 20th.
See, I think there's another angle offshoot of that angle. So obviously our stress level and my hairline, which is a problem you don't have yet, but my hairline suffers from this stress every single day. You log in Twitter and everybody's talking about all these different rumors. Fine. Obviously, we're going to be thrilled to get Dante Moore whenever it is. If it's at the blue and gold game, great. If it's midsummer, great. If it's late, whenever. But the other angle of this is, to what extent do you think it would impact the rest of the 23 class if he were to join sooner, even verbally? So then my hairline grows back, which I'm still waiting for. But then other players might see that he verbally committed to Notre Dame, and that could create a domino effect. How real or fan made up is that notion that you want him in early and other guys going to see that, want to play with them? Or do you think guys are going to make their own decision and that would just be a benefit? If you're a great receiver, you join and then he comes later. Like, how does the timing work on attracting other guys that want to play with more if he waits?
Well, I'll tell you, it certainly doesn't hurt, right? I think guys make their own decision. I've never really been somebody that buys into the concept of, I'm sure you see the edits of, Carnell Tate and Dante Moore, oh, we're a package deal. Those don't really happen. They're fun for guys to talk about, take pictures together, whatever. Obviously, I'd love it. You get arguably the number one quarterback and receiver in the same class. I mean, that's the way you upgrade Notre Dame football. I still think that's a possibility with Carnell Tate. It doesn't seem as much of a lock to Ohio State as before. But, Notre Dame needs 4 or 5 receivers in this class. You have to. You thought you had 3, and then you lose 2 like the day before signing day. So you only end up with the 1 in Tobias Merriweather, who I like a lot. But receiver is the main issue for Notre Dame. And once you get your stud quarterback in, guys will tend to follow. Not that that's exactly what they're waiting on, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have a stud quarterback. Hey, this is the guy that's going to be throwing me the ball. Like, it's easier to picture. Dante Moore seems like he'll be a great recruiter. Hey, you want me to throw the ball to you? He knows these guys. He's been in the national circuits. They know who he is. So, he's thrown to a lot of these guys already, especially Carnell Tate. So, it certainly doesn't hurt. I think that we might see a domino effect, as we're kind of already seeing with Arnold, as I mentioned earlier, Arnold committing, and then Vizina, and then Dante Moore. So the dominoes are falling, and they will with receiver as well. About 6 or 7 names to know there, and Notre Dame's got to get at least 4 of them.
So I got one more question finishing up the quarterback piece, and then I want to get into the receivers. This is a new angle. This is something new that we have to worry about. A lot of Notre Dame people are worried about the NIL angle of this, and that the longer this drags out, the guy, good family, we like the Notre Dame education, all that's true, but you make these visits, there's this underlying idea that it just might be upping the ante. And we go around these other schools and they're willing to guarantee you this. You go to the next guy, they're guaranteeing you 25 grand more than that. Like, that's a new age concern that we've never really had to deal with publicly. We knew the bag man was a thing, but it wasn't legal, but it's always been a thing. That does make me a little nervous because I am still unsure of exactly what Notre Dame's large-scale NIL plans are. And I just worry that the further we get down this road and all these visits and all these other places, those type of deals are going to sound better and better and better. That is an angle where I don't know how you combat it other than Notre Dame coming up with the great NIL situation on their own. Is that a big deal to you? Is it something that's in your calculus? Because I've been seeing a lot of it this week.
I think it's something to consider for sure. You have to imagine the parents of the recruits are considering as well, especially a big time, high profile quarterback. So that's something that they're definitely being pitched. And we don't know necessarily that Notre Dame doesn't have some sort of NIL structure. I mean, you see national analysts say a lot, man, there's no greater position to be at than the quarterback of Notre Dame. The amount of people that love or hate you, you have all this attention on you. It's so polarizing in that way. So I think, while you have like a Texas A&M that's going to promote, oh, we have all this money, we're throwing at guys, hence why they signed like 13 5-stars in the last class. But I have this isn't me saying this from like a source at Notre Dame or anything, but I kind of have a sneaking suspicion that they are doing stuff in NIL and just aren't. That's not the Notre Dame way to promote it and throwing money at guys, right? They're not going to just completely ignore this. I mean, it's not what I want to say. It's not ruled in the way it should by the NCAA yet. It will be, but Notre Dame's not completely ignoring NIL. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, and I know that. Whenever I ask about it, I'm told that they're working on it. They're working on it. They meet about it weekly. My only advice to Notre Dame would be, and this has been my NIL advice from the beginning, whatever they're going to do, whatever structure, tie it into community, education, charity, and make the guys able to benefit a little bit. So it'll be more palatable to everybody around Notre Dame and people that don't like the money idea. But it would be a big mistake for Notre Dame not to publicize whatever they do have going on when they get it set. Get it public. It's not a hush, hush. We shouldn't be doing this anymore. Get it out there and let everybody know you're embracing this. So whatever they come up with, get it public. And I think that would help alleviate some of the questions we have about it.
I agree. I think it's just something that it's going to take time. And I know people are tired of hearing that, but Notre Dame tends to take its time in everything, including coaching hires. Do you remember how frustrating that was when you knew Golden was the guy and it just drags on and on and on and on? So I think they take their time with these kind of things. We'll know something here over the summer.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be like this hush hush thing. Like it's just not wrong anymore. Be public with whatever you come up with. So transitioning from quarterbacks into wide receiver, we all know in the Notre Dame circle what a big priority wide receivers have to be. Not an option, have to be because of the numbers. So let's start with this. We all are in agreement. We still feel really good about Braylon James being Irish very soon, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one where you can, and I spent some time looking at his film too, and I like a lot of what I see.
There's a lot to like.
I like a lot of what I see. So if you could bank on that coming through, what are the other names and scenarios, and where do they sit regarding Notre Dame and the other wide receivers we're looking at?
Yeah, so Braylon James looks to be the best option for Notre Dame to be, he has a commitment date set for, I believe, what's next? It's the 19th to the 20th, which would be next week. So on CBS Sports, it'll be live streamed and everything. I'm like putting out a promo for CBS Sports. But Jaden Greathouse, Rodney Gallagher, I believe, are the next two dominoes to kind of fall. Rico Flores has kind of hinted at a decision, but that was on April Fool's Day, so I don't really know what to make of that. You can't take anything seriously on that. But Carnell Tate's the name to know, too. Obviously, everybody's been talking about him forever. And it looked like he was an Ohio State lock, and then he took a visit to Notre Dame, took a visit to Tennessee. Those are the three that have been there forever. He drops a top 10, top 5. It's always been these three. So I think that might have opened it up for him a little bit. I mean, it's hard to read social media, and I don't talk to him personally. But other names to know, Malik Elzy is a good one. I kind of see him as like the fourth or fifth in the pecking order for Notre Dame, if you will. And then Ronan Hanoffin is an athlete. You can play offense or defense. You know, at that point, I really like what I see of his film. So you bring that guy in and figure it out. I'm a big fan of that. You know, Notre Dame didn't know what it had in Cam Hart necessarily as a wide receiver. You bring him over to corner where he's shined, and I think he's going to continue to shine for the next season or two at Notre Dame. So I'm a big fan of bringing in athletes like that, and it works well in my NCAA 14 career mode. So that's always good.
Nice. At least you benefit off it, right?
Right.
Is aside from wide receiver, which we all know is a priority just based on the numbers, what do you think would fall next in the pecking order in terms of prioritization for the staff to fill out the rest of the 23 class? What else do you think are premier needs?
So there really isn't a lot of needs. Notre Dame's done really well filling in spots. I'd like to see defensive line continue to expand and grow. And you have to keep Keon Keeley in the class, first of all. You have to keep Brendan Vernon in the class. But then it comes down to, have you heard of Boubacar Traore, the Boston College? Okay. Yep. So all things seem to be pointing towards Notre Dame. That makes sense. Went to a Catholic high school, was committed to backup college, and now he wants to take a step up a little bit. So yeah, I think that all signs kind of point towards Notre Dame. You know, I don't say that with a ton of knowledge about the situation, but it makes sense. And then Jason Moore is the other one. So I don't know if Notre Dame will take both. I don't know how many spots they're really going to have, and it comes down to, you know, worrying about roster structure as well. So how many guys are leaving after this year? And, you know, Notre Dame doesn't really ever have a problem getting down to 85, but yeah, like I said about Hanoffin, I'm a big fan of, you take the guys and figure it out later. Cut some of the guys that aren't panning out, or, you know, kind of push them, you know, transfer. So Moore and Traore are names to know. And then, John, when is this dropping?
When is this show dropping? Tomorrow night?
Okay, so Friday we should have good news on Jabron Payne. He's actually a 2022 guy. He decommitted from Indiana. He was with Dylan McCullough, who's now the Notre Dame's running backs coach. So the signs are kind of pointing towards him coming to Notre Dame to be the fifth running back. But Kentucky's in the mix there as well, from what I was reading this morning. So that should be something. But yeah, Friday is the day for Jabron Payne.
Interesting. If you're looking at a time frame, not for the quarterbacks, but are we looking at, if it's like not the spring game or around then we're looking at what, into the summer when some of these guys start to pop? Or does it lead right up to when a high school starts, like their season? Like, I think Notre Dame people are feeling like, okay, this class got to number one and we love it, and I love looking at that all day. And then we have all this smoke online, and you're waiting for the next dominoes. What is realistic? Because I don't feel like some of this is realistic, waking up every day thinking it's a reality, especially of the caliber of guys we're going for. It's like the cycle. Is it a summer thing?
Yes and no. I was expecting good news earlier this month, but I think things are going to start to happen quickly. We had that Smith come in from out of nowhere, the Minnesota transfer. So there's Nathan and I I'm not sure if you heard this, Nathan and I set the bar for this month at 3.5 commitments. So you already have Smith. Payne, all signs are pointing towards Notre Dame. Braylon James, all signs are pointing towards Notre Dame. There's 3 just in this month, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was 1 or 2 more. And then you continue to move forward, and spots start to fill up. Guys are always different. Cycles are always different, but you'll get a handful, maybe 5 or 7 during the summer. And then a lot of guys tend to like to make their decision before their senior year starts so they can focus on their senior year. But then you see some guys as well, you know, specifically the high profile guys, which you don't necessarily want to hear, like Dante Moore, for example, that want to drag it out all the way until December, the hat flipper kind of guys. So, but that's big boy recruiting.
I'm telling you, man, it's a big gamble. Like I got anxiety just thinking about like what the haves and the have-nots, and there's just not much in the middle on this situation. We're either going to be thrilled out of our minds, or I'm going to have some really good content on here of me being upset. So either way it goes, that's just what's going to happen.
Great either way, because it's going to be a great class where we get you freaking out. But at the same time, we wouldn't have this class if it wasn't for Marcus Freeman being hired at Notre Dame as defensive coordinator and then upgraded to head coach. This class under Brian Kelly is not a thing.
Yeah.
So grateful for what you have now, for sure. This talent that's already in the class is leaps and bounds above what's normal.
Yep. And I've been saying too, with the gold throne discussion, I was saying I'm not looking at that as Dante Moore singularly. I'm looking at that recruiting effort overall as a representation of the kind of effort and creativity we're going to see ongoing from this staff. Even if it doesn't work with him for any reason, it just tells me they get it and they're looking at it the right way. What does blue and gold game weekend look like? Do we got a bunch of visitors? Could there be a surprise pop commitment there? What are we looking at for blue and gold week?
A lot of visitors. The Notre Dame's looking to bring in as much of the 2023 class as possible, all the committed guys, along with the guys that they're really pushing for to commit. You want them to be with their potential future teammates, right? It all makes sense that way. So I'm trying to think, in the past couple of years, Notre Dame's had guys that popped on blue and gold weekend. Botelho is one that I remember, and that was a big time deal. He was a top 100 player at the time. There was another one recently, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if, during that weekend, the vibes are great and a guy decides he wants to pop. So whether that's silently or publicly, I think that's a thing that people don't know about enough, is that silent commitments happen a lot. So yeah, I mean, like I said, a commitment is just naming a leader anyways, but committing to a coaching staff and then you're getting that out of the way is a relief for a guy, and then he wants to make a big announcement with his family and at school, whatever. So it takes time to coordinate those things, but a lot of it is getting your spot locked in, right? You don't know what other guys are going to do. Say Notre Dame only wants to take 4 receivers and 5 want in. You got to lock in your spot. Of course, Notre Dame's going to take as many stud receivers as they can get, but just as an example.
That's it. That's interesting, the timing on all that and how that all shapes out. Just as we wrap up here, as somebody, since I've known you a handful of years, started working with you a little bit, I mean, you're into this recruiting stuff at a very in-depth level. Just overall, what is the biggest practical difference you see in the Freeman era recruiting effort versus previous, whether it be Brian Kelly or any other Notre Dame coach? What's the biggest difference you see?
You probably put it in one word: accessibility. Freeman is always available, probably to his own detriment, to be honest, to be able to answering phone calls from current players, former players, recruits, calling and texting. That's something Brian Kelly refused to do. And that's a huge thing. If a guy has a question and wants to talk to you on the phone, Freeman's absolutely down to do that. So accessibility is huge, and his charisma and relatability. It's all in his personality, and he's the guy that people want to play for. Like, you see his speeches, you want to run through a brick wall. You have it or you don't. He has it. So yeah, and to put it in a word, it's accessibility, and guys like that.
Yep. I totally agree with you. And you can't teach it. You can't grow into it. You can't learn it. Brian Kelly will show you can't fake it. You just kind of got to have it. Lou Holtz was a guy who had it, and Freeman's the closest thing to that motivationally and genuinely, as somebody who gets Notre Dame and loves the spirit of Notre Dame and frames everything we're doing as for Notre Dame, not about him. If Notre Dame's ever going to get over the hump, it may not be Freeman, but it's going to be this vibe. I'm certain of that. It is going to be this kind of vibe. So that's just how I feel that. I don't think that. I feel that. And that is very different. I feel that difference, and it's a big deal. So as we wrap up, anything else you want to add that we didn't cover or that we skipped over? Any names or position groups you think we need to keep our eyes on that coming up? Anything going on?
Trying to think. I think offensive line is interesting, but I don't.
Jagasaw, what's up with him? I saw some smoke with him in Notre Dame earlier a week ago. I think, what's the deal with that?
Notre Dame looks to be in a good spot for him. Monroe Freeling's another one. But, Notre Dame's put themselves in a good spot to where, that maybe they've taken a couple too many offensive linemen. And, they're always going to get hurt and some don't pan out. But he stands a guy that wants to focus on a couple targets anyways, and he tends to get his guys. I mean, he has the pedigree. Just point to all the guys in the NFL. Point at Quentin Nelson, Ronnie Stanley, Mike McGlinchey, all of them. Zach Martin. So he has that pedigree to be able to point at and say, look, if you come to Notre Dame, what I can make you become, right? So he seems to be laser focused on a set of 3 or 4 guys, and Notre Dame's put themselves in a good spot for him. I don't know about timelines for them necessarily, but offensive linemen don't tend to be the guys that make big grand announcements. They tend to just kind of do their thing and get on with it. That's kind of the nature of the position.
Yeah, and Harry's got a reputation for not like casting a huge net in recruiting,
right.
But he finds those few guys that he really loves, and then he puts all the attention there, usually ends up with them. And like you said, the history and lineage there does a lot of that recruiting work on its own, which is beautiful.
You can't.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So Mason, I'm going to let you go to the gym. I know you got things to do. You're going to go get a workout in. I really appreciate you being here. I needed somebody I trusted just to bounce some of these things off and make sure that I was on the right track. So I appreciate you being here very much. Thank you. Everybody go check out the Golden Homers. Go find Mason Plummer on Twitter. And everybody have a great night.